right, it's 11:30. Let's get started. So thank you all for joining me today. I'm Angie Rupert, founder of Rupert Law Group. We focus exclusively on E2 and E1 visas. So no matter what treaty country you're from and what state you want to live in, we can help. Today, we're going to talk about E2 visa employees. So there are two types of E2 visas that you could get. One is the investor visa, which is what most of you are probably familiar with. You invest in a business, you own and operate the business, that type of thing. That's an E2 investor. There are also E2 employees. So what is the difference between just a regular employee and an E2 employee? So a regular employee would be a U.S. citizen or green card holder. As an E2 investor, you know that you're expected to hire those people, whatever makes sense for your business. However, you should have several U.S. Citizen or green card holders employed at your business after 5 years. But these are actually visas. These are for employees who are from your home country and will be working in the U.S. business on an E2 visa as well, but as an employee, not as an investor. So let's talk a little bit about that and kind of break it down a little bit. So what are the requirements? So actually, let's give a little bit of an example. I think that's better sometimes to highlight. So let's say that we have a guy named Steve. Steve is from New Zealand. Steve wants to start a consulting business in Texas. Amazing. So Steve is going to go through the whole process of being an E2 investor. He invests the money, he shows his majority ownership, control, et cetera, et cetera. Steve's approved in Sydney as an E2 investor. So he comes to Texas and he starts running his business and he hires 3 or 4 US citizens and he realizes, the old COO that I had at my Australian business, he would be an amazing fit here. And I really need his help to continue growing this business here in the United States. So I'm going to hire him as I'm sorry, and I think I said Australia, I meant New Zealand. I'm going to hire him as the COO of the United States business. Now, we know that the business already qualifies as an E2 visa business because I got the E2 investor visa. So now I want to hire John to be my COO, and I know that he's going to do great in this position. So now we're going to get a second E2 visa. This is for the employee for John. Now, the thing that we've got to make sure of with John is that he is also a New Zealand citizen. That's very, very important. If John is an Australian citizen, not a New Zealand citizen, like our owner, Steve is, it's not going to work, okay? So all of your E2 employees must have the same passport as the owner controller of the US E2 entity, okay? So that's number one. Number two, there's 2 types of E2 employees. There's the managerial executive, and then there's the essential skills. So probably in this case, because he's a COO, John we would try to get him qualified as a supervisor managerial executive E2 employee. So what we need to show is that John has the experience as an executive and that the role he'll be fulfilling in the United States is also executive in nature. So the focus here isn't so much on the business. There is a little bit of focus, which we'll talk about in a second, but it's much more on John. What's John's passport? What's John's previous experience? What is the job that John's going to be doing here in the United States? We have to make sure he has the same passport as the E2 business owner, investor. We have to make sure that he has executive experience and that the position here in the United States is also executive. Now, where can we run into trouble with that? Let me give you a real life example of a business that I helped with an E2 employee that ran into some trouble. So the business was a UK-based business, and they had been operating in the United States for something like 10 years. I did not help with the initial E2. They had been renewed a couple of times, and some different things had gone on, and so far, so good. So the owner of the UK business came to me and said, hey, I want to hire this gal. She is going to be the CFO of this business. and she's got tons of experience. In fact, I have a related business in the UK, and she's been the CFO there for years. And the UK business is much smaller than the US, so this is really a promotion for her. We have, I think they had something like 9 or 10 employees. We have $3 to $4 million in revenues every year. She's going to be and she has tons of experience. She's going to be a great addition for this. So I said, great. So I talked to the gal that was going to be the the CFO. Her resume looked stellar. The job she was going to do in the US definitely looked executive level to me. And she had a UK passport, which is what the owner had. So far, so good. But there was actually an issue with the business, not with the employee. The business had changed EIN numbers and had changed names. The actual entity itself had changed names and EIN numbers. So the issue was the business that had been approved in the past no longer existed. It was the same business, meaning same employees, they did the same things, but they had changed the structure and the entity. So when this employee went to the embassy and applied, they said, you look great. Job looks great. Resume looks great. We see that you have a UK passport. Amazing. But we're having an issue making sure that this E2 business is still meets the qualifications because this is a different name. Oh man. So all of that had happened before they came to me. We were aware, of course, at the time that the employee went there, that is what had gone on. But we thought we might be able to kind of explain it away and squeeze it in. We couldn't do it. Okay, so that was an issue too. So yes, for E2 employees, the focus is actually going to be on the employee, their experience, their passport, and what they're going to be doing in the US. But we still have to make sure that every time an E2 visa employee comes to the United States or applies for a visa, that the E2 business also still qualifies as an E2 business. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's take another example. And this was another example I actually had out of Croatia. So there was a guy who owned a business in Croatia, and he wanted to open a similar business in the United States. It was within the entertainment industry. And so but he did not want to come to the United States. He's like, I want to stick it in Croatia. I've got a business going on here. I want to continue running that. What I'm going to do instead is send over the CEO of the US entity, and that person is going to be running the business. So in that case, it was almost like an E2 investor visa application, right? So we had to show that the business actually qualified for the E2 visa because they had never applied for an E2 visa before. So the business had to qualify, meet all of those requirements for the E2 visa, substantial investment, not marginal, all of those things. And then we applied for the applicant. We added the applicant's info, who was the employee, saying, hey, here's his experience as an executive in the past. Here's who he is. He also has a passport from Croatia. Here's what the job he's going to be doing in the United States. That was also really crucial. Third thing I want to talk about today, and I'm trying to keep it brief but informative. I think I could talk about this topic for a long time, but I don't want to bore everyone to tears. Obviously, reach out anytime after this video. But the third thing that I want to talk about is when an investor and an employee both want to come over together. So normally what I recommend is that the investor gets the visa first. When the investor comes over here, hire some US employees so we can justify another executive, right? So keep in mind the difference between an investor and an employee and how those are viewed at the consulate, right? One is I'm writing checks, I'm hiring US citizens, I'm hiring green card holders. I want to come here to grow, invest more money, and invest more US employees. So think about how that might be viewed from the consulate. Great, extra money for us, more jobs. That's amazing. We want to approve these visas because we want more investment and more jobs versus the employee. Now, whether this is reality or not, that's a discussion for another time. But the viewpoint could be more like, okay, well, a US citizen should be the CFO of this business. Why are they hiring this person? You know, so it's a little bit different scrutiny, right? Well, is this person truly an executive? I don't know. we need to really check out what's going on with the business. Okay. The other thing I want to point out is that you've got to be able to justify executives. All right. So if you, the E2 investor, want to come over and run the business, you must run the business, right? Direct and develop the business. And maybe you only have one or two US employees. And then you say, oh, I need to bring this other executive over. They're going to say, you need two executives to supervise two employees. Does that make sense? In some instances, maybe it does, but in a lot, you're going to have to really explain why you need a second executive when you only have two employees. Okay, so keep that in mind. So if there's an investor and an employee that want to come over, I normally say, again, investor, apply first. You get approved, hopefully, get over here, kind of get the business going a little bit, maybe 6 months, get several employees on, show that the revenues are coming, show that things are going, and justify why you need that E2 employee executive. Second of all, there is a different type of E2 employee, and that is an E2 essential employee, right? So these are a little bit trickier, and most E2 visa attorneys don't like to do essential employees because they are viewed with even stricter scrutiny. They really want to know why you're hiring somebody from out of the country and what type of special skills does this person have. So in these kinds of cases, I think really think very technical, engineering, those types of things that are like, well, here would be a great example of an E2 employee that would fit into the essential category. Hey, this person was the architect for a proprietary machine that this company has invented. We hold patents on it in our home country of Ireland. We are filing for patents here in the US. This machine is integral to what our US business is going to be doing. This person designed it. So it has very special needs. It can only be fixed in certain ways. We have to, custom make parts for it because nothing else exists, things like that. That's kind of an extreme example, but that gives you kind of an idea of what it is that they're looking for. Now, essential employees are usually only approved for the length of time that they are needed. So investors usually will be approved usually for the entire length of time that the visa is eligible, right? So in Canada, 5 years, UK, 5 years, Mexico and Australia, 4 years. Every country kind of has a different relationship with the United States, a different treaty. But for the essential employees, let's say you have an essential employee from Canada and they kind of fit that last example I gave, right? They have very special skills related specifically to this business, specifically maybe to the equipment or inventory or something that's integral to this business. They will say, great, we'll approve you, but we're not just going to say for 5 years. We're going to say for the length of time needed. So if you need this person to come down and for the first 18 months, make sure that the equipment's running, make any tweaks and changes, whatever, their E2 essential employee visa may only be approved for 18 months because they want those people out as soon as they can get them out. Okay. So stricter scrutiny yet, much stricter than the investor, stricter even than the E2 employee executive. So keep that in mind. We have a few questions. Tatiana is here. Tatiana from Rupert Law Group. She's around somewhere. Let's see. Let's just take one. Let's see. An Italian citizen intends to start an E2 business here in the U.S. The owner already is an American citizen and has dual citizenship. So anybody that has dual citizenship, with American citizenship being one of them, does not count actually for an E2. Same goes with a green card. So somebody is an Italian, in this instance, an Italian citizen and has a U.S. green card. They are viewed as a U.S. permanent resident, not as an Italian citizen. So keep that in mind as far as ownership goes. But as far as employees go, lots of questions, lots of interesting ideas out there. And I would be thrilled to talk to any of you about those of you who already have an E2 business and want to bring someone over from your home country, or those who are wanting to start an E2 business and maybe want to come over with an employee or want to send an employee and don't want to come to the US. We've helped people in all of those situations. So we'd be happy to help you. Stay tuned. If you're watching this recorded, stay tuned for the contact information after the video is over. If you're watching live, obviously go to our website, rupertlawgroup.com, and there you will find WhatsApp number or a form, and that email comes to me, so I'll be happy to respond. Please reach out anytime. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.